The rain fell in heavy sheets across the downtown streets, turning the December evening into a blur of neon lights and rushing figures. Marcus Chen pulled his coat tighter as he hurried toward his Mercedes, the quarterly board meeting having run later than expected. At 34, he had built Chen Technologies from a garage startup into a billion-dollar empire. But success came with its own prison of endless meetings, demanding schedules, and the constant weight of responsibility. As CEO and single father to 7-year-old Emma, Marcus had learned to compartmentalize his life with surgical precision. Work was work, home was home, and the messy complications of the world outside those boundaries were someone else's problem. He had charity galas to write checks at, tax-deductible donations to make, but actual human suffering was something he observed from behind tinted windows and marble lobbies. That carefully constructed distance shattered the moment he heard her voice. "Please don't take my baby." The cry cut through the drumming rain like a blade. Marcus froze halfway to his car, his hand suspended over the door handle. The sound came from the alley beside the office building, a narrow space he'd passed thousands of times without a second glance. But something in that desperate plea made his chest tighten with recognition. He'd heard that same terror in his own voice years ago, when Emma's mother had threatened to disappear with their daughter during their bitter divorce. Against every instinct, screaming at him to get in his car and drive away, Marcus found himself walking toward the alley. The scene that greeted him there would be burned into his memory forever. A young woman, probably in her early 20s, sat huddled against the brick wall. Her clothes were soaked through, hanging off her thin frame like tattered flags. In her arms, she clutched a bundle wrapped in what looked like a torn blanket, rocking back and forth as tears streamed down her dirt-streaked face. Standing over her were 2 police officers, their expressions a mixture of professional duty and uncomfortable sympathy. "Ma'am, you can't stay here," one of the officers was saying, his voice gentler than Marcus had expected. "This is private property, and with the baby ... Child Services needs to get involved." "No, please," the woman sobbed, pulling the bundle closer to her chest. "I'll move, I'll go somewhere else. Just don't take my baby. She's all I have left." Marcus stepped closer, his expensive shoes splashing in the growing puddles. In the dim light from the street lamp, he could see the woman more clearly. She was younger than he'd first thought, with dark hair plastered to her skull and eyes that held the particular kind of exhaustion that comes from having nowhere to go. But it was the fierce protection in the way she held her child that struck him most. The baby, he could see now it was indeed an infant, maybe 6 months old, was surprisingly clean and well-wrapped despite their circumstances. Whatever else this woman lacked, she was clearly fighting to take care of her child. "Officers," Marcus heard himself saying, surprising everyone including himself. "Is there a problem here?" Both policemen turned, taking in his tailored suit and obvious wealth with the quick assessment of those used to dealing with all levels of society. "Sir, this is just a routine matter. The woman and her child are trespassing, and we need to—" "I'm Marcus Chen," he interrupted, pulling out his business card. "I own this building." The officers exchanged glances. Everyone in the city knew. The Chen Technologies Tower, one of the most recognizable landmarks on the skyline. The woman looked up at him with a mixture of fear and desperate hope that made his throat tight. "If I say she's not trespassing, then she's not trespassing, correct?" Marcus continued, his mind racing ahead of his mouth. He had no idea what he was doing, but something about the situation felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. He could step back into his safe, controlled life, or he could jump. "Well, yes, sir, but the child welfare situation. Is there evidence of abuse or neglect?" Marcus asked, crouching down beside the woman. Up close, he could see that despite her desperate circumstances, both she and the baby appeared clean and cared for. The infant was sleeping peacefully, her tiny face peaceful despite the chaos around her. "What's your name?" Marcus asked the woman gently. "Sarah," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain. "Sarah Martinez, and this is Lily." She adjusted the blanket slightly, revealing a beautiful baby with dark hair and perfect tiny features. "How long have you been on the street, Sarah?" 3 weeks. The words came out like a confession. "I was staying with my sister, but her boyfriend ... he said we had to go. I've been trying to find work, but nobody wants to hire someone with no address and the shelters ... She trailed off, shaking her head. Marcus knew about the city's shelter system from the reports that crossed his desk at various charity functions. Overcrowded, underfunded, often unsafe, especially for vulnerable women with children. The waiting list stretched for months. "Officers," he said, standing up. "I'll take responsibility for them tonight. They're my guests." The policeman looked skeptical. But with no law being broken and the property owner vouching for the occupants, they had little choice. After taking down Marcus's information and making a few notes, they retreated to their patrol car, though. Marcus noticed they lingered nearby, probably calling in to verify his identity. He turned back to Sarah, who was staring at him with an expression of shock and wariness. "Why?" She asked simply. It was a fair question. One Marcus wasn't sure he could answer. "I have a daughter," he said finally. "If something happened to me, if she was alone and scared." He shrugged, the rest of the sentence hanging in the rain between. "Them. I can't pay you," Sarah said quickly. "I don't have anything to give you. I'm not asking for payment." Marcus pulled out his phone, scrolling through contacts. "There's a hotel 2 blocks from here. Clean, safe, good room service." Sarah's eyes widened. "I can single quotes T ... too much." "I don't deserve." "Stop," Marcus said, more sharply than he'd intended. She flinched, and he immediately softened his tone. "Sorry, it's just nobody deserves to be out in this weather with a baby. Nobody." As he made the hotel reservation, Marcus found himself thinking about his own daughter, safe and warm in their penthouse apartment with Maria, their live-in nanny. Emma had never known what it was like to be hungry or cold or afraid. She lived in a world of private schools and ballet lessons and summer camps, surrounded by the kind of security that wealth could buy. But what if all of that disappeared tomorrow? What if he died in a car accident, or the company collapsed, or any of 100 other disasters struck? Would Emma end up like Sarah, clutching her own child in some dark alley while strangers decided her fate? The thought made him physically sick. "The hotel's booked," he told Sarah, putting his phone away. 3 nights, all meals included. That should give us time to figure out something more permanent. "Us?" Sarah's voice was tiny. Marcus paused. He hadn't meant to say us. He'd meant to say you, give her a few days to get on her feet, maybe write a check to assuage his conscience, then return to his normal life. But looking at this young mother and her baby, he realized that wasn't going to be possible. "My car's around the corner," he said instead. "Let's get you somewhere dry." The ride to the hotel was quiet except for the sound of the rain on the windshield and the soft murmur of Sarah singing to Lily, who had woken up and was making small, unhappy sounds. Marcus found himself glancing in the rearview mirror, watching the way Sarah's face transformed when she looked at her daughter. It was the same expression he'd seen on his own face in photographs with Emma, a fierce, protective love that would move mountains or die trying. At the hotel, Marcus spoke quietly with the manager, a discreet man who asked no questions about the obviously homeless woman and baby being checked into one of their finest suites. Money, Marcus reflected, had a way of smoothing over life's rough edges, at least temporarily. I'll have some clothes sent up, Marcus told Sarah as they stood in the elegant lobby. Baby supplies, too. What size do you wear? Sarah looked down at herself, then back at the marble floors and crystal chandeliers surrounding them. I don't belong here, she said quietly. Tonight you do, Marcus replied. We'll worry about tomorrow when it comes. As the elevator carried them upward, Marcus caught their reflection in the polished doors. He looked exactly like what he was, a wealthy businessman in an expensive suit. Sarah looked like what she was, a homeless woman holding her baby. But somehow, in that golden reflection, they looked like they belonged together, like they were part of the same story. The suite was larger than some people's apartments, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. Sarah stood in the doorway for a long moment, Lily stirring in her arms, before finally stepping inside. There's a crib, she said wonderingly, spotting the hotel's standard amenities for families with infants. And room service, Marcus added, picking up the menu. When did you last eat? Sarah's silence was answer enough. Marcus ordered enough food for a small army. Sandwiches, soup, fruit, anything that looked nourishing and easy to eat. While they waited, he excused himself to make several phone calls from the hallway. First, he called Maria to check on Emma, listening to his daughter's excited chatter about her school play rehearsal. Then he called his assistant, canceling his morning meetings. Finally, he called his lawyer, a convie.